Nice here, okay? Right, so my topic today is why blockchain needs women. I love this topic. So I want to thank Michael Healy for organizing this. I'm so glad because, as I say, I've been so sort of COVID head, and I've been lots of volunteering locally here in the countryside in Ireland, and I haven't done that much work. So it's so nice. Normally I'm on the circuit the whole time. I'm, Davos and Texas and, I don't know, Kiev, you name it, all over the place at blockchain conferences, which I love. So it's very nice for me to get my head back into blockchain. So the topic I chose today is why blockchain needs women. And I'm going to start with the punchline, or the ending, if you like. You know the story. What if the Lehman Brothers were the Lehman sisters? We might not have had the 2008 financial crash. Boom, boom. Okay. So we know why we need women. I mean, it's an obvious, but and everything is better with women, equal representation. And I don't think I'm saying anything that's extraordinarily, crazy or anything like that. And I want to start off though, first of all, to explain why do I love blockchain so much? I'm presuming if you're here listening, it's the women bit, maybe it's the blockchain bit, maybe that attracted you. But I want to tell you a very brief personal story about why I love blockchain and why I'm so passionate about it. Just before the financial crash, hi George, it's before the financial crash in 2008, I hit divorce and recession at the same time. And I couldn't survive both, it was impossible. And my ex went back to the UK, became bankrupt, and he gave the debt to myself and our 2 children. It was my divorce present. So I went through, maybe you guys were affected at the financial crash. I went through it quite a lot. I had the banks took my home, at home repossession, bailiffs came to my door, business collapsed. It was absolutely horrible. As it happened, I did it very publicly by accident because people in Ireland, they were doing a lot of shame. If you failed financially, it was shameful in some way. And I'm kind of going, it's very painful to lose everything, but it's not shameful. So I became kind of an accidental activist. And the banks were saying things like, debt forgiveness and moral hazard. And I'm going, excuse me? And then in the middle of all this, I tried to sell the big house to which the mortgage was attached. I got a cash offer of 500,000 euros. The banks refused consent to sell. And they instead preferred to repossess the home. And so they sold it the following year for 1/10 of its price. It made no sense. And I was forced then into bankruptcy because I had a large loan, because the loan didn't end with the house. And I had no money. So when I became bankrupt, I discovered that I wasn't able to run for public office. The laws in Ireland reflected the laws in the UK that bankrupts were considered unworthy and not good citizens. So I wasn't allowed to run for public office. So, excuse me, I got a bit cross about this. So anyway, I become a bit of an accidental activist. I'm a slow burn. It took me 10 years to realize that some things are wrong in this world. And so I brought the Irish government to the High Court, and I argued that my constitutional rights were being infringed because I wasn't allowed to run for public office, and I changed the law. And then in 2014, I ran in the European parliamentary elections, and I got 11,500 votes, and great, happy days. I was very happy. And then I thought, oh, my life is over. That was it. I'd done my bit of activism. I've done my bit of rah-rah and protesting, whatever. And that was kind of over. And then in 2017, I met blockchain and I went, oh my God. I now understand blockchain, you guys, you're here presumably because you have some interest in blockchain. I just thought the whole world of blockchain was so different. It's transformational. It just changes things. The ethos of people working in the space is so different as well. People sure want to make money. Of course they do. Everyone wants to make money and support their family and their loved ones and drive a nice car, whatever it is. But it's not a zero-sum game. And that's what really appealed to me, that really, I went, this is how I make my difference on the world. I've finally come to where I'm going to be at. And then I realized, I've been in fintech 30 years. I've worked all around the world, London and Singapore and Australia and stuff. So I'm used to being in a male-dominated industry. But whoa, I went, the blockchain, it's like between 4 and 7% women. It's like a real sausage fest in there. I went, this is wrong, because I believe that blockchain is so important to the world, to the wellness of the world, we need women. So I'm thinking, why aren't women in here? And don't give me that old women are risk adverse, because that's actually a debunk. It's not actually true. And it's not, the whole crypto thing, that's not why women aren't there. And I'm thinking, but why aren't they there? So if that's not the reason. And there's a thing called unconscious bias. I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about it. This is really good. It's fun. This is fun. This is not attacking anybody. But it can be very damaging, and it explains why women are excluded from some of the most important things that go on in our world. And I got a lot of information that kind of was brought to my attention by the UK feminist, Caroline Credo Perez. If you haven't come across her, she's a very interesting woman. And back in 2017, just your ordinary feminist, you know, just writing and doing stuff, whatever. And at that time, the Bank of England decided they wanted to change the £10 note. It had Elizabeth Fry on it. She was a woman who was looked after the prisons, some prison reform, and they wanted to put Churchill on it. Seems reasonable enough, except for the fact that had they taken off Elizabeth Fry off the £10 note and put on Churchill, would have been wall-to-wall men on all the banknotes. And she kind of went, that's a bit strange. So she did a bit of a campaign, and it did two things. First off, it caused a huge hate campaign against her. She had death threats, I mean, of the most obnoxious kind, sent at her the whole time, so much so the police were brought in. But she was also successful. And now Jane Austen resides happily on the £10 English sterling note, and the only female apart from the Queen to be on those notes, which is kind of cool. But after that, in 2018, Caroline released this book called Invisible Women. And this is what I want to talk to you. I mean, women need to be in blockchain, and why aren't they? Unconscious bias. Let me give you some really interesting, fun examples. You can bring them up at the dinner table the next time you're chatting, or when you're out at the bar, when the bar is open, and you can say, do you know? Toilets. Toilets in public spaces. Now, we all know that when we go to a public space, if it's a theatre or there's a concert, there's usually a long line of women outside the women's loo, and the men's loo, none at all. Now, why is this? Do you think, people say, or do people think it's because women put their makeup on, or they chit-chat at the windows? Is that why the women are such big, long spaces? I gotta tell you, it's not. Now, you might have an inkling about this. What actually happens is, when you give equal floor space in a public building to toilets, two things happen. One off, men have urinals. That doubles the amount of men that can pass through the facility. And then secondly, women take 2.3 times or longer to use a toilet than men. Because A, we don't have a penis. So we can't just whip it out and go to the urinal or whatever. We have to take clothes off, and we have to, you know, sit down and then put clothes back on again. And then secondly, women are often attended by young children or older people. So in fact, if you think about it, oh, that makes sense. There shouldn't be equal space given to male and female. There should be more space given to women, 2.4 times exactly. Then cars. Cars are another example of unconscious bias. We know that men have more accidents while driving, even pro rata with the number of men driving and all the rest of it. But when women drive, even though when women get into a crash, they crash less. But when they do get into a crash, they are 47% more likely to be injured. And moreover, they're 17% more likely to die. Why is that? Is that women crash better than men? You know, they're more effective at crashing? No, it's the crash dummy. The crash test dummy, we all know about it. Until very, very recently, I think so maybe only the last 7 or 8 years, crash test dummies have been made in the shape of a man. So they're tall, and they got shoulders and muscles, and their weight and even the length of their legs, it all suits men. It's a man. So when the crash happens, the woman's body, who is shorter, different spaces, whatever, they end up being injured. And to give you a really good example, I love this, seatbelts. Seatbelts save lives. We know that, right? Now, as a woman, a seatbelt is the bane of your life, especially if you're busty. You want to get the seatbelt on, and depending on what you're wearing, you're shifting around, it's not comfortable. And when people do crash, it can be very uncomfortable, the injury sustained because of the breasts where the seatbelt comes in. If you consider, when children are on seatbelts, on little car chairs, right? They often have the seatbelt coming from the crotch over the 2 shoulders. Now, wouldn't men like that? If the seatbelt in cars came at the crotch and over the 2 shoulders, I don't think you'd like it very much. So it's just a whole idea of unconscious bias. Not people don't set out on purpose to, you know, injure women or make it more difficult, but they haven't factored it into their thinking. Same way drugs. Most medical drugs are tested and formulated for men's bodies, which means they are not as effective on women's bodies. Women die more from strokes and heart attacks because the medication given is not meant for them. It's all about this reference male. Even your mobile phone. I mean, I have a very small mobile phone, it's very old. But most mobile phones these days are 5.5 inches in size. So it suits a man's hand, right? So a man can do things one-handed. But you know what, guys? Women need to do one-handed phoning too. I don't necessarily mean rude stuff. I mean, if you are on a tube or a train or you're pushing a buggy, you need to maybe do your texting with one hand and not with this big thing you can't get your fingers around. And I love this example, unconscious bias, snow clearing. In Sweden, this makes great sense. I mean, again, it's just this unconscious thing. In Sweden, you used to have this operandi modus, whereby if you had snow, you would clean the main roads first of all, then the side roads, and then you would do the pavements. That makes sense, yeah? Except when you consider that most households, the man predominantly tends to have the use of the car. And for man, his use of the car is also, again, data backs us up, goes from home to work and back again. Whereas women, who don't have a car or who do have a car, their roads, their paths, their trails are much more linked. They might drop the baby off to the creche. They might see the granny. They might go at the shopping. So their journeys are much more diverse. And plus also, mostly women or even parents, if they're pushing a buggy along on the side of the pavement, if there's 3 inches of snow, it's very tough to push a buggy. It's easier to drive in 3 inches of snow than it is to push a buggy on a pavement. And moreover, if the accidents that happen on pavements in this type of condition end up costing the state more because there's more injuries and there's more stuff involved. So it saves the state money, but actually makes sense. And it's only when you sit back and you go, ooh, unconscious bias. And that's not really the male and female thing, just about let's rethink things. I mean, and there are anomalies. If you think about it, the first computers, that word was applied to women working in NASA. You've seen the film, I forget the name of it, who were doing all the sums. So women were computers from the very beginning. Now, of course, we know that only 11% of women are actually programmers. Like, what's happened there? It's kind of crazy. And even things like sat-nav. Sat-nav is typically programmed to respond to a man's voice. And there was a funny story recently where a woman was using sat-nav in the front. Her husband was in the back with the baby. And when he spoke, the sat-nav listened, ignored her totally because she had a woman's voice. And we do know that, like, diversity, the Siri thing, if you tried, I think they're fixing it, but with Siri, if you asked for, where can I get some Viagra? No problem. If you said, where's the nearest abortion clinic? Don't know. So there are all these things because men were programming them and they didn't think about what their needs were. Let me give you a little puzzle. In times of coronavirus, we're all thinking about sort of puzzles. I'm sure we all share them, but in quizzes a whole lot. Here's the puzzle. A father drives his son, he's a school-going son, for a summer job at a big business locally. And the father drives up, pulls up at the big company and he says, you're going to go fine, you're fine. This is his pep talk. And his son's about to jump out of the car and the phone rings. Dad, we'll answer it. And the chap answers it and he goes, after he says, who is that? Sorry, and the person who called, it was the CEO calling the boy to say, you've got this, son. And you ask in the puzzle, you say, how can that be? The father's there and he's bringing it, and the CEO says, you've got this, son? And the quiz, and if you know this, it's obvious, but people go, oh yeah, maybe it was a granddad. Maybe it's what they call people in those parts of the world. Oh, the CEO is the mother. Ding dong, obvious, but it's all these things that are not, because also in our language, when we use things like man for mankind, people still think man. Politician means a man, actor means a man, dentist means a man. Even those they're supposed to be universal, they're not. So how do we fix this? Because we need more women in blockchain. It's unconscious bias has been keeping women out of many things, including the important things like blockchain. There are some good examples. I mean, this is clever too. Maybe you've heard the story about the orchestra, and they were, I don't know where it was, Berlin, whatever. And they would recruit, of course, the young musicians from the conservatoire. And every year, like 70% of the people recruited were male, only 30% female. And even like in the orchestra, because they're pretty, gender, positive people are going, why is that? So they said, right, there's obviously some sort of bias going on. We put up a curtain. And the next bit of the rehearsals, the person worked up and they did the rehearsal. Still, they got 70% men hard over women. Why was that? Then, very clever, they did their auditions on carpet. So the person walks across the carpet behind the curtain. And guess what? The actual, the people recruited were, because they could tell pretty much from the sound of the shoes on the hard surface if it was a man or a woman. And it's just, that is just like a blinding thing about unconscious bias, that people are hiring people based on their gender, not on how they can perform. And I mean, there's other issues where people are trying to fix this imperative. Things like politics. There is, now I'm a big fan of gender quotas in politics. Go figure. And if we left it as it was, for it to normalize, for it to be 50-50, it would take about 400 years. I know here in Ireland, we've only got 22% women. It's the same in the UK, it's about 22% women. And if you left it just to naturally normalize, although this world, I'm not quite sure if it would take about 400 years. So the gender quotas that are brought here in Ireland are pretty impressive, because the political parties, in order to get their funding, they have to put forward equal amounts of men and women. And at the time, you get a lot of people saying, "Oh my God, it's the right job, man for the job." Hear that? You know, this is unfair. I don't want to be promoted just because I'm a woman. But that also presupposes that the women being promoted are lesser than the men. And also in politics in particular, it's often a family. So it's father to son. There's no necessarily great skill sets there, and not necessarily. And the nice thing is that when you do get a 50% breakup, because that's what the country is. Every country, as far as I know in the world, has a 50-50 or 49% breakdown between men and women. They're going to make laws that are going to be good for men and women. And that's kind of interesting, because you might say, people are like, well, what does that matter? Because also parliaments too as well tend to be rather inflexible when it comes to women, because they have late hours for voting. They have you have to be present, you have to do different things, and it's not really conducive to running a family life, the life of the day. And they've got bars, pubs in the parliamentary buildings that are all subsidized, which is kind of mad. But anyway, but if you have more women, they're going to make for women-friendly and family-friendly environments. So even if you're not a woman, let's say you are just a parent, a male or female, the family-friendly hours are going to be better for you, like no meetings before 9, none after 5 perhaps. But if you're not a parent, do you know what? All that extra time, you can go out and play golf, climb mountains, whatever you want to do. It actually benefits you. You don't have to have this stringent thing. So I'm really big into this. But there's still opposition to it. There's still people think it's not a good thing. And I remember once I was chairing a Women in Tech conference in Dublin. And I was speaking to the next batch of speakers, and one of them was he was a chief diversity officer for a big manufacturer of laptops, big company. And he was at the party, he had the long gray hair, and he was very suave, and we were talking about stuff, and he's big into diversity. He's making all the right noises, except when I started going on about gender quotas in politics, he went, no. I said, what do you mean? He said, why would you, he said, promote a woman so she fails? I'll let that sink in. Why would you promote a woman so she fails? What the? Why wouldn't you promote a woman and then support her so she succeeds? And not even a woman, promote a man. I mean, it's just the whole concept that you would promote someone so they would fail. I thought, he's missing the whole point, and he's head of diversity. That's kind of scary when somebody who is responsible for diversity for this major company on a global basis kind of misses the whole point. And, you know, when you support her, it's not just it's your mother, it's your daughter, it's your sister, it's your wife, it's your whatever. Now it is getting better. I'm, you know, a long time on this planet, you know, I'm 30 years working, and, you know, slowly I'm seeing things getting better. And a really good example, it's kind of funny, but a really good example is, I'll give you the bad one first, Hollywood. Hollywood has a rotten history of treating women. Rotten. And we know the Me Too is equalizing loads of things, happy days. But with Hollywood, with the 50 Shades film, which I hated all 3 of them, didn't like them. But anyway, they came out in 2015, and they were starring Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson. Now, as you may or may not know, if you have seen the 50 Shades films, there's a lot more Dakota Johnson on show than there is of Jamie Dornan. A lot. Consistently. A lot. I mean, and that shades back to 2016. Women were 3 times more likely to be naked in films than men. Like, why? And I mean, this is unconscious bias. Here we come again. Director James Foley, he directed one of the 50 Shades films. I'm not quite sure which one. He said, it wasn't on purpose, he said. I'm going to mute that person there. Sorry, beg your pardon. Sorry. Sorry. The James Foley, the director, he said, it wasn't on purpose, he said. Just where the camera was. Just where the camera was. So, I mean, like, Hollywood has a rotten tradition of treating women badly, and that's just that breakdown. Just where the camera was. Oh my God, is he not the director? Is he not direct where the camera was? But anyway, it's with great pleasure that things are changing and moving. And have you seen, are you watching the hit at the moment, the worldwide hit of Normal People? And it's an Irish book produced by BBC, directed by Lenny Abramson, who was in my class in school. But it's a huge hit worldwide. It's on BBC, it's on local channels here, it's on Halo. It's a streaming site. My daughter's watching it there. It's a love story of 2 young people from school into college. right? And there is 50-50 nudity between the two main characters. Happy days, happy days. We're finally getting the point that it's not just the woman that's naked, let the man be naked. And it's all this unconscious bias that, like, again, I won't even go, this is a total, side thing. Why is a woman's nipples erotic and a man's not? I mean, there's so much stuff in this world that you go, oh yeah, now that you mention it, why should that be? Because men's nipples are just as sensitive as women's. Anyway, whole lot of craziness there. So why does blockchain need women? My answer would be because everything needs women, especially business. And I used to finish this talk in various forms, whatever, but I used to finish this talk with the money. Say, let's go to the money, okay? Let's go to the money. And you may be aware that in recent years, major data studies by Nordea, Credit Suisse, and McKinsey have all pointed to the fact that when you put a woman with, and give her decision-making control onto a board in a company, the profits of that company, without fail, rise between 20 and 30% by just putting a woman in a position of power on a board. Oh my God, that's I used to finish my story that case closed. It makes no, you bring women in. We need women for all the nice touchy-feely reasons. If we don't die, we can survive in car crashes. We can go to the loo and not go into a queue, and we can make the world a better place. Happy days. But now in this time of coronavirus, I've got a different last line. They've been looking at, we're all in the middle of the coronavirus. I hope where you are, you're safe and you're doing okay. But there's been reports, and I think it was in Forbes, it came, which countries are best protecting their people? Which countries are best protecting their people in coronavirus and COVID-19? This is a huge thing. Which countries? Do you know there? New Zealand, Germany, Iceland, Finland, Norway, Denmark, and Taiwan. And guess what? They're all run by women. That's why we need women in blockchain. Thank you very much. Ta-da! Any comments? Who's seen normal people? No? It's very good. Oh dear, it's a silence. Ah, thank you, George. I'm feeling very sad. So how are people doing with coronavirus? Are you doing okay? Is it impacting your work? How's your country doing?
Doing great.
Where are you based?
Dubai with George.
Dubai?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it's George. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I'm looking at someone else. Sorry. There was someone else came on. So you're doing okay?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And is a surge? Do you think we're past the surge? Do you think we're coming, or will there be a new one coming up? Do we know?
It's a very tricky situation because I guess one person can really spread again. So it's very, very, you have to live with it now very carefully. So
yeah. No, it is. I mean, I know here in Ireland, I think we squashed we didn't have those scenes like in North Italy, not at all, nothing near it. We had loads of empty beds, but that was a frightening time in March to think that we might get that. And now it's getting back, though. I think it's hard getting back into how do we get working. This is the next phase, like without undoing the good that we've done. How do we get working now?
Yeah, it's tough. It's very challenging. I don't know what's going to happen next. So, we're keeping the fingers crossed right now.
Yeah. Well, I found it's only like, I was so glad when Michael said, "You want to speak today?" And I went, "Oh, okay." Like, "Oh, women are blocking." "Oh, okay, I'll do that." Because I've been so distracted. First of all, the first couple of weeks, I was so worried. And I have two sisters who are in hospitals in Dublin, so frontline. And then I was worried about my mom, who lives alone. She's 90, and I worried whole things. And then I got involved with a lot of volunteering. So a lot of broadcast and volunteering, helping people, this whole thing to get through it. And now, well, that's great. But now not the most important thing, but the next step is how do we get society back on track again, in terms of the economy, and I think that's a tough one.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. So.
Because we don't want to go, we are in recession already, but how do we get, and so in some ways the recession is funny because it's not like 2008 where we ran out of money and we did lots of weird stuff. Now people just stopped working because they weren't allowed to go to work. So if you can get them all back into work again, will those companies survive and start going again?
Yeah, I mean, the government has to balance. They have to save the economy and the people. So, I mean, somebody tried herd immunity, but herd immunity is dangerous for those people who are elderly.
Yeah.
So, Sweden is trying one method, and South Korea is trying one other method, and I think those countries who did the lockdown very late, uh, those are going to have hard time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And then I worry about the southern continent, the southern part of the world, with huge populace. People can self-isolate. I haven't actually heard much what's happening in like in African countries or in India. I know parts of India, there was a good news story, one part of India, I forget the lady's name, Kerala, that just did lockdown in January almost, and that they had no cases. But when you have such a huge populace and a
Oh,
small
it's
space.
Kerala. You're talking about Kerala. It's
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
They had cases, but they were because they had virus cases before. Something more virulent. It was the this one. It's something more virulent that is like Nipah virus.
Yeah.
So that's why they had experience, and they basically locked down
Yeah.
quite early, and
That's an amazing story because that's a huge populace in a small space. But actually what you say there makes sense because they have experience of a virus before. So presumably all the world will have experience of when we get to the sort of more safety place and they talk about the next surge, the next, loop going up, we'll know better. So maybe it won't be as bad.
yeah. I mean, it's a basically a very tricky situation because, right, for example, South Korea, everything was going well, but then one person went to nightclubs and spread the disease. So the government have to be on the guard all the time.
Yeah, and I guess too as well. I mean, I think it's counterproductive in some ways, finger pointing, because people can do it and not even know they have the disease. So it's better to like, bring people along with you. I think that earlier on it was interesting. I was listening to a psychologist, and he was saying, in terms of when you bring in the lockdown, it's very important to do it at a time when the people come with you. Do it too soon, they'll ignore you. Too late, they're bleeped. But if you do it at the time, and then you've got to keep on changing. It's like right now here in Ireland, I know we're getting to the point where we have saved the population. It is that we have saved the frontline workers. It's been amazing. We've lost, I think, about 1,300 people, which is a lot of people, but we're down to like 10 deaths a day or less. So we have saved all that North Italy stuff, but the people are getting very cross with the government now, very cross, and rightly and wrongly, because they're going, what are you doing now? And it's the board stage almost. I don't know.
Yeah. And we need more women in the blockchain. You're right.
Yeah, sorry, I got distracted with COVID. We need more women because it makes sense. Women think differently. And again, it's not, I always say, I'm not anti-men. Of course I'm not. But it's so obvious when you put men and women together, and companies thrive when there's men and women. And it's too important for this to be just, handled by men, by geeks. I'm kind of geeky too as well, but, just by male geeks. It's too important. We want ordinary people in there and ordinary women in there.
Yeah, you're right.
Men in there.
By research, they found that the women are more right-brain, so they can see the big picture compared to men who are logical. They see, step by step, quarter to quarter. So that's why, it's not coincident that most women prime ministers, they're locked down. The country is quite ahead, like New Zealand, Taiwan, Germany, and they're quite good. They saw the long-term impact and what's damage going to happen to preventive steps. So you're right. We need more women in technology and blockchain.
Yeah, no, because I'm so excited about blockchain, what it can do for the world. That's why I'm going, I don't want this to go under as some sort of nerdy thing or some boy thing or a gaming thing, whatever. It has so much potential and operation for, for world poverty, for, ownership of property, for building business, for access to finance. I mean, it democratizes opportunity. And as a woman and a parent and a mother, I want that for the world. I want that for my kids, and I want it for your kids and for everybody's kids. I want us all not, this whole thing, 1% of the world has 80% of the wealth. Only so many cars you could drive, and I would much rather see everybody thriving. And we come to a stage in the world, and this pandemic may help us, where we go, do you know what? Maybe we can thrive. Maybe we can change the world.
Yeah. So thanks, Jillian. I guess time right now. It's my
Your turn. Okay, I'll go see what's your turn. Okay.
Thanks for your presentation. So